One of the things you often hear from religious people is that if you're not religious, you can't have a moral sense, because if you don't have, an ultimate arbiter, if you don't have somebody laying down right and wrong, good and evil, commandments, then how can you have a moral sense, because you have no framework for it, and actually, I've always thought that gets it upside down, that in a way religion is one of the early ways in which human beings tried to codify ideas of good and evil, but they were interested in codifying them. That maybe there is somewhere in the program, somewhere in the DNA, there's a desire for ethics. There's a desire for us to have, let's say like there's an ethics instinct in the way that
true north.
In the way that Steven Pinker talks about a language instinct, how do we learn language? Because we have an instinct for learning language. Maybe there's an ethics instinct that we have a desire to know good and bad. We have a desire to know right action, wrong action. I mean, it's how we bring up children.
Well, it's an organizing force.
Yes, exactly. I think the problem with that argument, I think this probably is so, that from the very earliest age, children need to know what is good and bad. They need to know what is right and wrong. And one of the things you look to your parents for is to put down those
reference
rules.
Points,
yeah. And you want the framework. You want your kids push against the borders, but they want to know where the borders are. So that suggests to me that there is a desire for an ethical framework. But the problem is that the DNA appears not to tell us what the ethical framework should be. We're not hardwired with ideas of what is good and what is bad, but only that there should be a description.
So if I put that there should be sort of an ethics instinct together with your earlier comment that your values they evolved over time, it leads me to one of the most remarkable things I read that you had said, which is basically that life teaches you who you are.
Yeah.
And it's something that, so your values are evolving over time and you're learning how this instinct works in the real world.
But you also learn the things that don't evolve. You also learn that there are things which are immutable truths, and I mean, telling the truth is one of those things. One of the biggest problems, I think, for us right now is that the idea of universal truth is something which has been seriously under attack, not just in this country, but around the world. The ideas which were embodied in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is that there are things which are the rights of all human beings by virtue of us being human beings. That applies everywhere in every country and in every culture, was something which almost every country of the United Nations signed up to at the time of the Universal Declaration. Now that has splintered, and you hear from all over the world that what we say are universal rights, China or Malaysia or Indonesia or the Philippines or Russia would say that we're being culturally imperialist, that we're imposing upon them.
Or we've had hundreds of years to develop democracy and rule of law.
Yes. Yeah. This is all bullshit. Yeah. This is always bullshit used by authoritarians to justify their authoritarianism.